opioids, a rare combination.
Hello everyone, this is Haji Yusuf with Minnesota Wired. Let's ride with Representative Hodan Hassan. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's been it's a long time coming. Planning on this great conversation I'm going to have with Representative Hodan Hassan. We are in our district right now. This is part of our districts, and this coming election will be your second term.
Yes.
Being a state representative.
Yes.
The second Somali Muslim female state representative.
Yes.
Of Minnesota, and we're going to have this great conversation about your district and about the people that you represent and your neighborhood and the community, the diverse community that you represent. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Haji.
COVID-19 is having an impact.
Yes.
You as a state representative, what do you hear? What do you witness? What do you see? And how do you feel about this impact affecting your district and also the state of Minnesota as well?
Well, thank you, Haji, for this conversation. I am excited and thrilled to be here and riding along with Haji Yusuf, having conversation with Minnesota Wire and its viewers. As you said, my name is Hodan Hassan. I'm a state rep from District 62A. It's in the urban core of South Minneapolis. COVID-19. Well, let me just say that 2020 has been a very challenging year, as you all know. They say when it rains, it pours. And when it pours, it impacts the most vulnerable. Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, it's a great state. It's a wonderful state. It has ample resources. It's a state that has, surplus every year. At the same time, when you look at the numbers, the difference between mainstream Minnesotans and Minnesotans of color and indigenous Minnesotans, the numbers are shocking and alarming. So we're starting off with disparity to begin with. And then COVID-19 came, and COVID-19, as research indicates, it's having a huge impact. It's disproportionately impacting communities of color and indigenous communities across the country, and in this state. We have people who are living in crowded buildings, multi-housing units. So if one person gets COVID-19, there's no room to, quarantine that person. They're using, maybe there's only one bathroom in that family household. And then talk about the economic impacts. Many people lost their jobs. They don't have a rainy day fund. These are people who were one paycheck away from being homeless. Thank God we have a governor who put in place the eviction moratorium, so people cannot get evicted. At the same time, the rent is accumulating. We recently passed a legislation for $30 million of rent support statewide. That's not enough. So COVID-19 is having a huge impact on communities of color and indigenous communities across the state of Minnesota. I represent a district that's over 70% communities of color, indigenous community. So I see the disparities. Every park in my district, there is an encampment. There are people who are unhoused, who are sleeping at the park, and they're not doing it because they're camping out. They're doing it because they don't have any other choice. Shelters are overflowing. There's no beds available in shelters. People are even afraid to go to shelters. So it's just another layer of disparity, of an existing disparity that was already there.
Exacerbated by COVID-19.
Yes.
On COVID-19 and education for your districts, how challenging, what are you hearing? How challenging is it for people that you represented? That you said 70% are people of color that live in your districts. How has this education been impacted by COVID-19? And what do you hear from the community and the parents on this issue?
I'm going to say that I'm hoping this year is going to be better than last year. But last year was a disaster. Minneapolis Public Housing, Minneapolis School District we went to distance learning, and we had tens of thousands of students who do not have access to internet, who do not have a Chromebook, and that was the beginning of going into distance learning. They have done a lot of work of trying to purchase new Chromebooks, trying to purchase hotspots, but even with that, let's just talk about people who are not native English speakers. If you have a mother who doesn't speak English, who have 5 or 6 kids at home,
and never had a prior education,
yep,
and came here as a refugee,
no
because
basic,
of the civil
yep,
war for
no,
30
yep,
years, 20,
yes,
30 something years. Go ahead.
no basic education, can't help with the kids with any of the work that's supposed to happen. And we're expecting that family to log into Google Hangouts, to do their work, to just log into Zoom, to just submit everything online. Well, guess what? That's not going to happen, because there is computer literacy issue, there is literacy issue, there is so many barriers. Many of the families that are in my district, what I'm hearing from them is that there's not enough resources for them to help their kids. And then this thing about parents going back to work. So both parents are working. You're leaving kids at home. You're leaving kids on their own, hoping that they're going to have the willpower to study. And we know
come up with the solution themselves, and be able to do their homework with no help, no support.
So there is a lot of issues. Last, school year, the end of last school year was a disaster, and we have done a lot of work working with Minneapolis public schools and other, public schools in the area and charter schools to figure out how can we make sure that there's resources for families, whether there's state dollars or other resources, to be sure that every child has a Chromebook, every child has access to internet, and also extra help. How can we make sure this parent who are not able to help their children, whether it's time issues because they're working, or whether it's literacy issues, whether it's computer or language or whatever barrier that there is there, how can we help these families? Because we already know that Minnesota has one of the worst education outcomes for students of color, so we don't want to add on to that. So how do we make sure that distance learning doesn't actually become another, equity issues. Another barrier to the outcome, educational outcome of this young, our future, educators, our future leaders, our future politicians, our future doctors and lawyers. And there's a lot of work being done. This, school year just started on Tuesday. We're gonna see. We have met with the school leadership, and there is a lot of promising,
And that's what I wanted to ask you as a state representative.
Yes.
Working with the governor. What roles are you guys playing in one, helping these parents answer some of these questions if they have questions, or when it comes to providing them, or is the state involved in trying to find a solution for this problem?
Well, the state is involved. So the state is involved in the way that if the school districts need extra money, that's the only place that they're gonna go to is to us, to come to us and say, we are out of resources, we need resources. But in at least Minneapolis, I'm not familiar with other districts, but at least in Minneapolis, what we've been doing is that the Minneapolis delegation, which is about 10 state House of Reps and 5 senators, to meet with leadership from Minneapolis School District, to talk to them, to figure out, continuously meet with them and work alongside with them to be sure that this issue doesn't continue, that we don't have, by the beginning of the school year, we don't have 7,000 kids with no laptops, or we don't have 10,000 kids with no internet access. And there's a lot of work being done, but we're gonna see, we will hear from families. Families have our phone numbers, they contact our offices, and that's what they have done. When last year school went online, we were flooded with questions about, we don't have laptops, we don't have internet, what are we going to do, how can you help? So we're hoping that it has only been 2 days, so I guess we will see what happens and where the disparities lie right now.
Is that moving on our conversation again, COVID-19, with that which you've just described and the challenges that the communities are falling because of that. There's another challenge also, and I think before this we had this conversation, and that is the opioid crisis and the death of young boys and girls from your districts and many other surrounding districts. And, can you really explain what your role is as a leader, as a state representative leader, and a leader, and as a mother as well, how important this fight against this crisis in regards to opioid is to you personally, and also to people that you know.
Of course. So as we know, like, opioid crisis has been on the rise. It has, in the last 5-7 years, we've been hearing about this, epidemic. That young people are taking, these pills, and they're addicted to it, and they can't help it. And then we keep hearing young people dying, 17, 18, like too young to die. What we need to understand, first of all, is that addiction is not a choice. Addiction is a disease. I want to make sure that people who are watching this clearly understand that addiction is not a choice, it's a disease. And there's help available. For me, as a professional who, prior to going into politics,
I wanted to mention that
Yeah.
before Hodan got into politics, she was so much into issues of mental health, and as a practitioner, a professional that has really practiced and understands well the issue of mental health in many communities in Minnesota. So I really wanted to. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't want to
No, that's fine. No,
yes.
that's fine. So as a professional who has worked in the field of mental health and chemical health, I understand that there's a limited knowledge on this issue, especially for parents from our community, from the Somali community. Parents don't understand that, this is a disease. They don't understand the resources available. They don't understand where to seek help. They don't know how to look for signs that your child may be using something. I remember a mother once came up to me and asked me, she said, my son has been in our basement for the last 20 days. The only time he comes up is to grab food. He's grumpy. He doesn't talk to anybody. It's dark down there. Every time I talk to him, he just has fit with me. And I asked her, I said, if he ever leaves the room, you should go and look around to see if there is it could be two things. It could be that he's going through something, he's some sort of a depression, mood, anxiety, some sort of a mental health issue, or it could be that he's using, something and he doesn't want to, associate with anybody.
Or he doesn't want anybody to know.
Yeah,
or
and he doesn't want
it. Yeah.
anyone to know. So, parents need to understand that you can be an ally on this issue. You can, help your young person. First of all, please don't shame them. Do not shame them. You lose that child. Once you start shaming and yelling and screaming at them and just doing what our parents do best, you lost that child to opioid. What these young people need is a supporting, loving parent that says, I may not know what you're going through, but I'm here to help you. What can I do? How can I be your ally in this fight? And not blame them and point fingers. That's it. It helps no one.
It doesn't help.
And to also know what is available. There are a lot of resources that are available to help these young people. And if what you don't know doesn't exist. If parents do not know that they can take their kid to a treatment center, they can do a treatment center, and while they're in that treatment center, you can go visit, you can support them, you can talk to them, you can be there for them without judging them. And once treatment ends, that treatment does not mean that that's the end of the problem.
Right.
Because once they finish treatment, they were gonna go back to the same environment, the same friends, the same people that they hang out with. So during the treatment, it's important that you stay in their life, but more important, once they finish treatment, that you help them change environments, find a job, go back to school, hang out with different people. So it's not
So the support network.
the support network.
Apart from parents' responsibility in making sure that they're aware of their children, what they're doing, where they are, who are they talking to.
Yes.
There is also the other side of opportunities, which you have spoken about, and there's a huge disparity. Can you speak to that?
Well, I started with my conversation with Minnesota being this great state that has also very disappointing numbers when it comes to disparities. And opioid is also another issue. I'll say this, the only reason why opioid become a problem and a concern is not because black and brown folks were using this. It's because young college students from suburban communities started using, and that was the alarming, and that was the wake-up call for many of the leaders, our state leaders, to say, wait a minute, this is a problem.
And those are the same leaders that were being pushed by pharmaceutical companies and drug companies not to pass some legislation.
Yes. Yep.
So when it became in their neighborhood, now it became
in their kids, in their neighborhood, in their kids' friends, then it was a wake-up call for everybody to say, oh, we do have a disparity. We do have an, opioid issue, and it's a crisis. And there's a task force that was created. There is $40 million. We asked the pharmaceutical companies to help because they created this problem. So we asked them, we passed a legislation that's asking $40 million from the pharmaceutical companies to be awarded to organizations that are doing this work. But with that said, is that $40 million going to go to our communities and black and brown communities? Most likely not. And the reason why I say that is that DHS normally is the one that would be administering these grants. DHS have entities that they work with, entities that they prefer to work with, and those entities are mainstream entities. It's like you and I have a relationship with you. If I need something that you have the expertise for, I'm gonna pick up the phone and call you and say, hey Haji, can you do this? And that's what it comes down to. But we're trying to change that culture to say, you can't just use the same entities that you have been using that have done nothing for communities of color. You have to use community-based entities that are working with black and brown folks and indigenous folks in the state of Minnesota that are touching the heart of the issue.
And they know where the problem is.
Yes.
They are very much aware of their community.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful.
And culturally appropriate,
Yes.
Treatment centers are very vital on this because young people need not only to connect with figuring out the issue, but they also need to connect with people who are from the same background as they are. So that's also another reason why we're pushing culturally appropriate treatment centers and culturally appropriate community entities that are addressing this problem and working alongside with these young people.
Again, we went from parents, we went to support you as an elected leader and what you have done. Let's talk about religious leadership, mosques and places of worship. What role as a leader will you advise they should play in fighting this crisis?
I think that they have actually the biggest responsibility. In any of the treatment centers that are out there are only few that are not faith-based. Most of them are faith-based. For whatever reason, people believe that religion and faith can get you out of addiction, which I'm not gonna say I agree with it or I don't agree with it because I don't have enough research on it. But a lot of it, if you look at it, many of the treatment centers out there are faith-based. So to know that we don't have a faith-based treatment center and we don't have our mosques talking about this issue constantly. I mean, recently I have seen mosques as Abu Bakr Siddiq hosting a youth conversation about opioid. It's a starting point, but we need this to be at the Jum'ah, khutbah.
Someone.
Yes,
Yes.
we have to talk about. We have to normalize this issue to a point where people know it. They know the mosques should have Narcan, kits,
Right.
where if somebody has, OD'd right there,
Right.
they can revive them.
Inside or outside. It could be anybody walking
it
out
could
there.
be
Right.
somebody outside. But I think that one of the criticism that I hope I don't get burned for this, but one of the criticism that I will say about our mosques is that we only want the perfect in society. Our mosques want the youth that are doing so well, but those youth do not need anybody's help. The youth that are struggling are the ones that need help, are the ones that we should lend a hand, reach up, help them up, build them back up. So we need to change this culture of like the only people that should be at the mosque are people who are doing good, are the perfect examples, are the models of our society. The models of our society do not need help. These young people are the ones that need help. So I'm hoping that our faith leaders, especially the young ones, can get comfortable talking about this issue, can get comfortable having a conversation with young people and learning about the warning signs that someone is actually using this, and getting comfortable with where the resources are. Where's the closest treatment center? Where's the closest community that someone can go and just get more information and resources from? So our religious
Even parents need resources, and they all pray. They all go to the mosque.
Yes.
I think a mosque and place of worship, any place of worship, can be a resource for the parents and
It's
educating them
crucial.
about telling them how they, signs that their kids have opioid, or they're suffering through this process. They have, this is a good place, because as a community, you and I know that, in a week probably you and I visit the mosque two or three times, and so are many other parents do the same. I think that you're right. You have a that's a very, very good point, and I haven't had anybody make that point. I think that's excellent.
It's crucial,
Crucial.
that we actually make mosques and places of worship to just get comfortable on addressing the opioid.
And also, I
issue.
think the idea, and I think you've spoken about this on many occasions, is having places that youth can spend time with, even if it's a place of worship. They have a basketball or after school program. Even right now, education. I think the mosques will have in a good place if we had some of these after school programs, or Friday lunch, like they have Sunday lunch in many other places of faith that cater for their communities. I think that's very important. Moving forward on this conversation about your district, how are you fighting for this district? I know you've done a lot. I know you've received a lot of good praises. I've had a lot of conversation with people. Moving forward, what is the future for you for this district, and how are you continuing this fight in this district for you?
Well, let me say that my district is one of the poorest districts in the state, and it's one of the most diverse districts, which is a blessing and a curse in one. So what the two things that I have been focused on, that I will continue to focus on, is economic development. We gotta create more opportunities for people, not only to be employed, but also to have an opportunity to start their own business.
Speaking of that, so you're in a district that got affected by the aftermath of the death of George Floyd, the civil unrest, yes?
Yep, that's part of my district. Lake Street, one side of Lake Street is mine, the other side is my colleague Aisha Gomez. So one is I believe, and I truly believe, the two basic human rights that people need is, income, a stable income, and stable housing. We have housing crisis in this district. We also have families that are barely making any money. People are spending 80% of their income just to pay rent. And this district is 82% to 86% renters. So almost everybody that lives here is a renter. And rent is way too expensive for a district that's this poor. We're talking about, 2-bedroom that's $1,400 to $1,800, and a family making maybe $3,000 a month. So the two things that I'm fighting, that I truly believe that will help people, is create more opportunities for people to get better jobs. People who want to start their businesses can get support, and businesses that are existing, how can we support them to thrive? And the other thing is housing. How can we get more housing, affordable housing? And when I say affordable, 30% or less. No one should ever spend more than 30% of their income on housing. So how can we create housing units that are affordable at a 30% mark? And continue to create more home ownership. We know that research has shown that people who are homeowners are less likely to become homeless. They have it's a wealth creation. It's a generational thing, so that family will stay there for the next how many generations. So putting more energy on home ownership, putting more energy on affordable housing, and jobs and economic development. Those are the things that I have focused on. Of course, education is also one of the top things that I want to work on, or I have been working on. But people cannot worry about education, health, or any other sector of life if they don't have stable housing and they don't have stable income. So those two are the key predictors of, people stabilizing people's lives, and that has been a commitment. Of course, I will forever be an advocate for mental health and mental health resources and chemical health, and how can we create more inclusive state. Racial equity is at the center of my work. Everything that I'm doing, I have to look at how did this, address racial equity issues. As you said earlier, my district was, burned down. Many businesses in my district were burned down or destroyed because of the civil unrest. And up to today, the state have not had a response. We put together a legislation that was gonna give money to these businesses, but it got blocked by the Senate, where every good idea dies. And even up till today, it has been few months, and up to today we have not had a response from the state to help these businesses rebuild.
Last question, and I'll let you be with the baby. This election, how important is it to you and everybody else in your district and also in the state of Minnesota?
Well, they say every election they say this is a pivotal year,
Yes.
but I will say this is do or die. We had 4 years of Donald Trump, almost 4 years of Donald Trump. We have seen what Donald Trump is capable of. We have seen the hatred, we have seen the division, we have seen the ignorance that's coming from the White House. We have seen many programs that are vital for our communities being cut or being compromised. So I will say this election is do or die. I want people to understand that we cannot afford to have 4 more years of Donald Trump. Locally, we cannot afford to have a Republican Senate who blocks everything that we try to accomplish in the House. So we need to flip the Senate, we need to keep the House, and we need to get rid of Donald Trump. So this election is it.